More than 2,200 years have passed since the day Qin Shi Huang passed away. But to this day, there is still one thing quietly leaking out from deep inside his mausoleum. It is not gold or silver, not treasures, but the very thing he once placed all his faith and even his life into: Mercury. In 2025, scientists used modern laser radar to scan the area of the burial mound and discovered something surprising. Mercury is still escaping into the air, even though more than 2 millennia have passed. Ancient books once described rivers of mercury flowing endlessly underground, and now science seems to be proving that what was recorded in the books was not nonsense. But the real story does not stop at the mercury leaking out. So why did one of the most powerful emperors in Chinese history decide to bury such an enormous amount of mercury in his tomb? And what happened when the very thing he believed was the key to immortality instead became what killed him? Stay with us, because the answer may surprise you. To understand why Mercury appears in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, we must go back to the words written on bamboo slips and silk more than 2,000 years ago. In the famous records of the Grand Historian, the historian Sima Qian wrote a passage that has left generations in awe. Using mercury to create the 100 rivers, the Yellow River, the Yangtze River, and the Great Sea, using mechanical devices to make the water flow endlessly. Imagine this. Qin Shi Huang did not want an ordinary tomb like other kings. He wanted to build an entire miniature world right underground, a world where he would still be the emperor, still rule over all people, still dominate everything forever. Mercury was the key material for him to realize that dream. He did not simply pour mercury down like a still lake. The engineers of the Qin dynasty designed sophisticated mechanical structures to make the rivers and lakes of mercury truly flow. Those shimmering rivers of mercury would accurately simulate the geography of the empire he had just unified: the rolling Yellow River, the vast Yangtze River, and the boundless Great Sea. For people of that time, mercury was not a toxic metal as we know it today. It was a symbol of eternal life. It represented the endless flow, the harmony between yin and yang, and immortal vitality. Qin Shi Huang believed that if he could bring his entire empire into the tomb and let those rivers of mercury flow endlessly, then his power and his life would also last forever in the same way. For hundreds of years, many people thought that Sima Qian's description was just exaggerated storytelling, a legend embellished to enhance the emperor's authority. Then modern science appeared, and everything began to change. In 2020, a group of scientists from China and Sweden brought the most advanced laser radar equipment at the time, called differential absorption LiDAR, to inspect the mausoleum. They did not need to dig any holes or disturb the tomb. They simply stood at a distance and let the laser scan the air above the vast burial mound. The results obtained made the entire research team pause for a few seconds in silence. The device detected mercury concentrations in the air here that were unusually high, many times higher than the safe levels in the surrounding areas. Even more dangerously, the mercury leakage was strongly concentrated on the west and south sides of the burial mound, the positions that ancient books describe as where the rivers and lakes of mercury were placed. But the scientists did not stop there. By 2025, they decided to trace the source more thoroughly. They went to Shenyang County, Shanxi Province, just over 100 kilometers from the burial mound. There, they discovered many ancient cinnabar mines, with clear traces of excavation from the Qin period and continuing through many later dynasties. When they compared samples of ore from these mines with the mercury in the soil around the mausoleum, the result was truly shocking. The chemical composition matched almost perfectly. What does this mean? It means the ancient books were not exaggerating at all. The rivers of mercury that Sima Qian described really existed. They not only existed in historical records, but are still leaking out into the outside world after more than 2,200 years. I must say that this moment is truly thought-provoking. A substance that we know today is extremely toxic, buried deep underground since ancient times, still has the ability to escape into the air and be detected by modern science. This shows just how massive and airtight this mausoleum project was. But this discovery also raises a bigger, deeper, and more haunting question. Why did Qin Shi Huang decide to bury such an enormous amount of mercury in his tomb? According to modern scientists' estimates, the amount of mercury used in the mausoleum could be as much as nearly 100 tons. Not a few dozen kilograms, but nearly 100 tons. Pause for a moment to imagine this number. 100 tons of mercury. That is an extremely large quantity. Even with the technology and logistics capabilities of the 21st century, it would require careful consideration. Yet more than 2,200 years ago, people managed to transport, handle, and place it deep underground. What is even more astonishing is, they did not simply pour the mercury down like filling a pond with water. The engineers and craftsmen of the Qin dynasty designed an incredibly sophisticated mechanical system. They created real rivers of mercury that flowed continuously, accurately simulating the flow of the Yellow River, the Yangtze River, and the Great Sea. All of this was operated by ancient machinery, possibly using water power, wind power, or temperature differences, so that the mercury never stopped moving. The entire central mausoleum was a complete miniature replica of China at that time. Rivers and lakes, mountains, palaces, plains, everything was meticulously recreated underground. This was not a tomb, but an entire miniature empire built exclusively for one person. This is truly one of the most complex, expensive, and grand engineering projects of ancient times. Even today, many engineers are still in awe of its precision and sophistication. But when talking about mercury, we cannot ignore a very frightening fact. Mercury is one of the most dangerous substances humans have ever known. Just inhaling a very small amount of mercury vapor can cause serious damage to the nervous system, brain, liver, and kidneys. Long-term exposure leads to trembling hands, memory loss, mental disorders, and even death. The miners who extracted the ore, the people who transported it, and those who directly poured the mercury into the underground system must have faced that horror every day. They knew clearly that what they were working with was extremely dangerous, but they were still forced to continue. Of course, for Qin Shi Huang, once he was in his coffin, mercury could no longer harm him, but he himself was the one who ordered the burial of an entire sea of toxins along with him. This makes me shudder when thinking about the price that had to be paid. How many workers, how many lives had to be sacrificed just to fulfill the immortality dream of one single person? Hundreds of thousands of people were brought here to work. Many of them likely died from exhaustion, illness, mercury poisoning, or were buried alive to keep the secret, all just to serve the death of one emperor. But why not some other substance, but mercury specifically? So we must go back to the past to understand the obsession that had taken deep root in the mind of the most powerful emperor in Chinese history. Throughout his life, Qin Shi Huang feared death to the point of nearly going mad. He was the one who unified the 6 states, built the Great Wall, and created a great empire. Yet the more power he held, the more he feared the impermanence of life. He could not accept that one day he too would have to lie down like ordinary people. He wanted to live forever, wanted his power to exist eternally. Therefore, he did everything possible. He sent hundreds of people to search for the legendary Penglai Island, said to have the elixir of immortality. He summoned many Taoist priests and sorcerers from everywhere to refine immortality pills. And this was the cause of the greatest tragedy. The immortality pills he took daily contained a very large amount of mercury. At that time, people believed that mercury was the divine medicine of heaven and earth, something that could harmonize yin and yang and bring immortality. This was a serious misconception, but very common in the cultivation circles of that era. They thought this shimmering liquid metal was the symbol of eternal life. But reality was completely the opposite. The very thing he believed was the medicine for immortality silently destroyed his body. Qin Shi Huang suffered from chronic mercury poisoning. Gradually, he became neurasthenic, trembled, suffered from insomnia, and had severe liver and kidney damage. Finally, at the age of 49, he died on his Eastern inspection tour, a tragic and lonely death. But the story does not end there. Even though he had been killed by mercury while alive, when lying on his sickbed and knowing he was about to depart, Qin Shi Huang still issued a horrifying order to bury an enormous amount of mercury with him in the mausoleum. Why did he still do that? First, he believed that mercury had the ability to preserve his body and prevent his corpse from decomposing. Second, and more importantly, he wanted to bring his dream of immortality with him to the afterlife. He wanted those rivers of Mercury to continue flowing, wanted the entire miniature empire to still exist, so he could continue being emperor forever. This is the most bitter and powerful irony. Mercury had killed him while he was alive, but he still clung tightly to it when he died. He could not let go of that obsession. Even though it had taken his life, he still wanted it to accompany him into eternity. This is perhaps the most horrifying and tragic level of obsession with immortality in human history. An emperor who once made the whole world tremble ultimately was destroyed from within by his own insatiable desire to live forever. And it was this uncontrollable obsession that made him willing to sacrifice so many lives and build a colossal project just to conceal his deepest fear. But the tragedy of Qin Shi Huang does not stop at his own death. It also left behind a dangerous legacy that continues to this day. More than 2,200 years have passed, but the Mercury in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum is still leaking. Precisely because of this, opening the central mausoleum remains one of the most difficult decisions in modern archaeology. If opened suddenly, the mercury gas accumulated over millennia would escape in large quantities. This would not only pose serious danger to the scientists and people in the surrounding area, but could also create a localized pollution zone that is difficult to control. Mercury is an extremely powerful toxin. Once it spreads into the air, the consequences would be very hard to predict. Not only is there a risk to human health, but the artifacts inside the mausoleum are also extremely fragile. Archaeologists once opened some small auxiliary pits of the terracotta army. They witnessed a sad phenomenon: the vibrant paint layers, the reds, purples, blues, which had kept their fresh colors for more than 2,000 years, began to peel, fade, and disappear completely just seconds after exposure to oxygen from outside. Imagine if the entire central mausoleum were opened, which may contain wood, silk, paintings, clothing, and countless other delicate artifacts. Then, in the blink of an eye, all of those things could be permanently destroyed. Moreover, our current technology is still not safe enough to excavate a gigantic space containing tens of tons of mercury. Even with laser radar, ground-penetrating radar, or other modern scanning methods, opening the tomb would still require handling an enormous amount of toxic gas and ensuring no damage to the artifacts, a challenge that humanity is not yet truly ready for. For these reasons, scientists and the Chinese government have chosen a cautious approach: non-invasive research. They continue to use remote technology to scan and study the mausoleum instead of opening it right now. This is not hesitation, but responsibility. Responsibility to protect the heritage for future generations, so that the secrets inside remain intact until humanity's technology is truly capable of accessing it safely. Qin Shi Huang built a mausoleum that is both magnificent and dangerous, and to this day, he is still making the whole world hesitate before the door he closed tightly more than 2 millennia ago. What do you think? One day, when technology is advanced and safe enough, should we open the central mausoleum to explore the secrets inside? Or should we let Qin Shi Huang rest in peace forever, with his dream of immortality and those rivers of mercury still quietly flowing in the darkness? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.